Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marius Nazare, and I'm here again with Chris Mulry. We are on episode
Hi
19th,
guys.
episode 19th, 19 of the London Property Podcast. And we're going to keep it quite short and sweet this week. I'm going to start off with one of the news of the week, which I thought was quite interesting, coming out from Nationwide, which is one of the country's biggest lender. And they've come out and said, well, their chief economist come out and said that there's going to be strong market recovery likely after the lockdown. And the reason why he's come out and said that is because ultimately they believe there was a lot of pickup in activity after the general election, and prices in certain markets were increasing by 2 to 3%, and their data shows that there was a lot of demand, and there were obviously the interest rates being very low facilitated a lot of people getting mortgages. Now this data which they have obviously doesn't take into account the effect of COVID-19 and how that has affected applications. But it's very interesting to see this kind of very positive news coming from the chief economist at Nationwide, saying that they believe that there will be a very strong recovery for the housing market. Now, this obviously applies to the whole of the UK. Again, as we've mentioned before, it's so important to distinguish between the different markets because London within itself has so many different micro markets which react differently. With us dealing in prime central London, I mean, we pretty much made a whole vlog about what's predicted to happen in prime central London and the luxury property segment, and that will probably remain resilient. But now we've got this article from the chief economist at Nationwide saying that they believe there will be a very strong recovery for the property market in the UK. Now, again, we don't know how it's actually going to turn out to be because it all depends of how long the lockdown will remain in place. But it is a bit of positivity again in the market, not as negative as we've seen, I guess, in the first 2 or 3 weeks after the lockdown. And it's coming from a big lender. So that's quite positive. And I think, Chris, you've got something somehow related to this in regards to when potentially some of the agencies and agents will be able to come back to work, or how it's going to look, as the lockdown restrictions are being eased by the government.
Yeah, Marius, it's more how it's going to look at this stage because we still don't have any specific dates. But the Chris Pincher, who is the housing minister, is drawing up guidelines for estate agents on how they can operate to, going back to showing houses again. And it kind of generally just involves advice from Public Health England with regards to trying to keep social distancing, maybe wearing gloves themselves, carrying disinfectants, that kind of thing. Buyers potentially wearing masks. If a seller is living at the property and it's a large house, for them to stay in one room when viewings are done, or for them to leave the property altogether, and a limited number of viewings on each property every day, that kind of thing. But there is a lot of pressure on the government now to, I think, something like, got some news here, the British Chamber of Commerce, which represents tens of thousands of companies, employ almost 6 million people across the UK. They've written to Boris Johnson to say that the government approach to leaving lockdown must they need guidance on it pretty much immediately, to harness the benefits of getting the economy going again and the public health. So a combination of the two. And it looks as if we're going to be getting some guidance on Sunday with regards to this. So it's starting to feel a little bit more positive. At least these things are now coming out in the news. And we've got a lot of people who do want to go and view things, and the inquiry levels over the past week have been the highest that they have been in the lockdown period. So I think a lot of people are keen to get out of the blocks as soon as they can. We've already got buyers chomping at the bit to go and view properties. Some particular buyers are actually trying to get into properties that have got tenants and say, "Oh, can you not just give us the name of the tenant so we can see if we can get in with them directly?" We're like, "No, we can't do that. Hold off." So yeah, it looks like we're going to get some guidance on this relatively quite soon, and it's not going to go back to normal, but at least we're going to be able to get up and running.
Yeah.
Quite soon. I mean, let's do our update maybe at the start of next week after the government announce what's happening on Sunday. But we seem to be getting quite close now.
Yeah, I think next week is going to be quite a big week in terms of getting a bit of an idea of what is going to happen. Well, Sunday evening. So obviously next week's episode 20 is going to be probably filled with a lot of news articles because there'll be so much to pick from. Ultimately, the news, and obviously everybody's kind of been paying attention. In the news, we start to see now statements like, yes, we have kind of flattened the curve, but the risk is the lockdown exit strategy is super important because we don't want to risk a second wave of infections and deaths. So everybody's going to be very, very keen to see what the government's exit strategy will be for businesses, and obviously for us as property advisors and agents. We're very, very keen to see, because we are, you've been on the phone all day today, just before we started recording this, super busy. There are things happening. Potentially we might have another exchange going through next week. And yeah, the fact that Nationwide as well now are coming, well, their chief economist, somebody who you would think would be very pessimistic in their approach, he's coming out saying because of the government fiscal intervention during the crisis and because of what's been happening before COVID-19 and all this demand and all this activity, they're very confident that there'll be a very strong recovery and the demand will still be there for the property market. And the fact that you get these kind of news is super important and positive.
And the banks really do want to lend as well.
Yeah.
One of the conversations I was having today with a buyer who previously offered on a property, pulled out for whatever reason, but he's still got the mortgage agreement in principle. Well, he's still got the mortgage offer valid for that property. And apparently Halifax were contacting them to contacting their broker to see if they're actually still going to go ahead with it, because they want to, they want it to be used as the mortgage offer. These lenders have targets to hit, and they're still pretty keen to lend. So it's not like the 2007-2008 financial crisis, where I can remember we had properties under offer, and halfway through the transactions, before we really knew what was going on, economically speaking, with the financial markets, we had some mortgage lenders that just kind of ground to a halt. And the buyers were saying to me, this one particular investor who bought several properties, and he said, "Chris, something isn't quite right with regards to the lender. They're never this slow. They're holding back. Something funny is going on." And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, everything kind of came crashing down. But that's not the case at the moment. This isn't a liquidity crisis with regards to finance and lending. It's just a confidence.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are people who are very negative and they think it's going to be the end of the world. Well, it's not going to be the case. And yes, technically speaking, we probably are going to go into a recession. But there's so many other things that make it look like it's going to be a delayed V-shaped recovery for the economy and for the housing market as well. And like you said, there's still, the fact that 2-3 weeks ago we had the banks come revising again their lending and opening the doors to new customers, whereas the first 2 weeks during the COVID crisis and after the lockdown, they stopped that and they were only lending up to like 60% loan to value. The fact that they immediately adjusted their strategy 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that drastic decision they had to take, just shows that everybody's kind of very in gears and very prepared to just make sure that things keep ticking along. And as now the curve has been flattened, we are looking at more and more motivated people to try and get the economy, the housing market. Everybody's very keen and geared up to do things. So I think there is going to be probably a lot more positivity coming out next week. And this is good for us. We are looking forward to being in the office, and ultimately we're seeing through the numbers of inquiries, the buyers that are calling us, and even the conversations that we're having with sellers and investors. There are people definitely out there wanting to transact, obviously ensuring that it's all safe for both parties. But yeah, it's all good. I guess this week's vlog is going to be, well, it is a short one. Next week we're going to have quite a lot of news to talk about. We don't have a question of the week this week, definitely next week. But ultimately, I guess that's what is the main headline in the property industry this week, and these two things that we're talking about. Next week we'll have more clarity of what's going to happen, and we'll update you on that. In the meantime, obviously, please, if you do enjoy the content and you find this valuable, subscribe, like, share, comment, share it with your friends or somebody that is interested in property. We're doing this on a weekly basis, and we would love to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your questions. If you are not sure about something or you need more information about a particular topic in property, we're happy to feature your question in our vlog and weekly podcasts and provide value. But yeah, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, basically everywhere. You just have to search London Property Podcast and you'll see the red logo. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for paying attention. And next week will be a very, very interesting vlog for sure. So stay tuned. See you guys.
See you.